In Lagos, the city never really sleeps. Cars honk, street vendors call out, and music drifts from hidden corners. Yet inside the tall gates of Zainab and Kunal's mansion, life seems calm, almost picture-perfect. To anyone looking in, they are the couple everyone admires. Kunal is successful in business, always dressed sharp, always smiling at the right time. Zainab is graceful, generous, and the kind of woman people describe as lucky. Together, they appear untouchable, wealthy, respected, the very image of happiness. Zainab herself believes it too. She trusts Kunal without question. He has provided her with everything she could dream of, and he never gives her a reason to doubt him. When friends whisper about unfaithful husbands in Lagos, she simply shakes her head. Not Kunal. He is different. He is hers. But even in a perfect home, curiosity finds a way in. One quiet afternoon, while Kunal is out, Zainab wanders through his study. The room smells faintly of his cologne and leather. She runs her fingers along the books and papers neatly stacked on his desk, and that is when she notices it. A drawer with a tiny brass lock. It looks ordinary, yet something about it pulls at her. Why lock this one drawer when every other part of the study is open? Her heart beats faster as she leans closer. She isn't looking for trouble. She only wants to understand. But in that small moment, without knowing it, Zainab is about to open the first crack in her perfect life. Her fingers shook slightly as she managed to pull the drawer open. It wasn't filled with documents or business papers like she had imagined. Instead, lying neatly inside was a single leather-bound photo album, heavy and worn at the edges. Zainab frowned. She thought maybe it was something sentimental, perhaps old family pictures or memories Kunal kept hidden away. With a small smile, she lifted it out, brushing off a thin layer of dust, and sat down slowly, curious to peek inside. The first page made her pause. A photo of a young woman, smiling, her head tilted just so. Zainab's heart skipped. It was Amina, her younger sister. She turned to the next page, and again there was Amina. Different outfit, different pose, but the same face staring back. Zainab blinked hard, confused. Maybe Kunal kept some family pictures, she told herself. But as she flipped further, her breath caught in her throat. These weren't family photos. Each page was filled with Amina's image, close-ups of her face, her body, even moments Zainab could tell were private. Some were from family gatherings, others from times Zainab remembered Amina staying at their home. She realized many of these shots must have been taken secretly, without Amina even knowing. The way Kunal had captured her, the way the photos were carefully arranged, spoke of obsession. Zainab's hands trembled as she turned the pages faster, hoping she was wrong, that there was some innocent explanation. But the deeper she went, the worse it became. Pictures of Amina laughing on the balcony. Amina in the pool. Amina asleep on the living room couch, her dress slightly shifted. Zainab felt sick. Her sister, her own blood, captured in such personal, vulnerable ways, and hidden here in her husband's drawer. Memories rushed back in a flash. Times when Amina visited, and Kunal seemed a little too attentive, always offering her a drink first, pulling out her chair at the table, asking about her studies with unusual interest. Zainab had brushed it off as kindness. Kunal was charming with everyone, after all. But seeing these photos laid out like a secret shrine, she couldn't lie to herself anymore. Her stomach churned as she closed the album quickly, clutching it to her chest as if it burned to touch it. A wave of betrayal washed over her, not just from Kunal, but from the thought of her sister being part of this hidden world. Did Amina know? Had she encouraged it? Or was she just as unaware as Zainab had been? Questions filled her mind like thunder, but no answers came. Zainab sat there in the quiet study, the album heavy in her lap, her heart pounding in her ears. Just hours ago, her life had looked perfect. Now, with every photograph seared into her memory, that picture had cracked wide open, and she knew nothing would ever look the same again. Zainab could barely breathe as she sat there in the study, the leather album pressed against her lap. Her hands were trembling so badly, she had to grip the edges to stop herself from dropping it. She had seen enough. The faces, the poses, the secret angles. There was no mistake. Kunal wasn't just curious about her sister, he was obsessed. The realization spread through her chest like poison. Her perfect picture of marriage had cracked, and all she could see now was betrayal staring her in the face. Her mind dragged her back to old memories she had once cherished. She remembered how often Amina visited their home, sometimes for weekends, sometimes for short stays whenever school or life grew stressful. Zainab had always welcomed her, happy to have her little sister close. Kunal had always been so accommodating, so warm. He would ask Amina if she was comfortable, if she needed anything, if the food was to her taste. He would joke with her, laugh with her, sometimes even tease her in a way Zainab thought was brotherly. Back then, it had seemed harmless, even sweet. But now, with the evidence of the photos heavy in her lap, those memories twisted like a knife. She remembered the way Kunal's eyes lingered a second longer, than they should have when Amina walked into the room. She remembered him pouring her a drink before anyone else at family dinners, his smile a little too eager. There were times Zainab caught him listening too closely, his gaze fixed on Amina while she spoke. She had pushed those small observations aside, telling herself she was imagining things. Kunal loved her. Hadn't he proven that over and over again? The betrayal wasn't only Kunal's. It was Amina's too. Zainab felt her chest tighten as she thought about her sister. Did Amina know? Was she aware of how Kunal looked at her? Did she allow it? Or worse, did she enjoy it? The thought made Zainab's stomach churn. Amina was supposed to be her closest ally, her blood, the one person she could trust completely. And yet, these photographs suggested a closeness that cut Zainab out of the picture entirely. Her heart pounded harder as the questions grew louder. If Kunal had been keeping this secret for so long, how far had it gone? Were the photos the beginning or just the surface of something deeper, something physical, something unthinkable? Zainab shook her head, tears blurring her vision. She didn't want to believe it, but the images she had seen were too clear, too intimate. The room seemed to close in around her. The bookshelves, the neat desk, the quiet ticking of the clock, it all felt suffocating. This study had once been Kunal's space of pride, a place where he worked late into the night. Now it felt like a prison of lies, and Zainab was trapped inside it with the truth. Her hands finally let go of the album, and it landed on the desk with a dull thud. She covered her face, trying to steady her breathing, but nothing could calm the storm inside her. The betrayal wasn't just about infidelity. It was about trust, about dignity, about family. The people she loved most had betrayed her in the darkest way possible. And deep down, she knew this was only the beginning of what was about to unravel. Zainab made a decision that night in the study. She wouldn't scream, she wouldn't confront, not yet. Instead, she would wait. She wanted to be sure, to see with her own eyes what the album had already whispered to her. If Kunal thought he could hide his obsession, she would let him believe he was safe, for now. That was how the truth would show itself, not in her words, but in his actions. A few weeks later, the perfect opportunity came. Her mother organized a small family gathering, one of those evenings where everyone came together to eat, laugh, and catch up. Amina was there, glowing as always, chatting with cousins, helping in the kitchen, her laughter floating through the house. Kunal was his usual charming self, moving from group to group, making jokes, refilling glasses. To anyone else, it looked normal. But Zainab's eyes were sharp now, searching for the cracks in their performance. It didn't take long. She noticed how Kunal's gaze kept finding Amina in the room, even when he was in the middle of a conversation. He tried to mask it, but Zainab caught the flickers of hunger in his eyes. She saw how his hand brushed lightly against Amina's arm when he passed her the salad bowl. So quick, so subtle, but enough to make her stomach twist. Amina, for her part, didn't pull away. She smiled softly, almost shyly, as if there was a secret between them. Later, while everyone gathered in the living room, Zainab sat quietly in a corner, watching. Kunal leaned a little too close when Amina spoke, listening intently, his voice dropping lower when he responded. Their heads bent toward each other, whispers exchanged in the middle of family chatter. It was nothing anyone else would notice. Two relatives talking, sharing a laugh. But to Zainab, it was as clear as daylight. She recognized the coded language of stolen glances, of touches disguised as accidents, of laughter that carried too much meaning. Her heart ached, but her face never betrayed her. She smiled when she needed to, poured drinks, passed plates, even joined in the laughter now and then. But inside, she was studying them like a detective, collecting silent proof that what she had found in the album wasn't a mistake or misunderstanding. It was real. It was happening right in front of her. When Amina excused herself to the balcony, Kunal followed a few minutes later under the excuse of taking a phone call. Zainab didn't move. She simply waited, her ears straining for the muffled sounds of their voices through the open window. She couldn't hear their words, but she saw the way Amina leaned on the railing, her face tilted toward Kunal, and the way his hand rested on the rail just inches from hers. That distance was too small, too dangerous. By the end of the night, Zainab's silence had become her greatest weapon. She left with her fears no longer just fears, they were facts, witnessed with her own eyes. And though her heart felt heavy, her resolve grew sharper. The perfect picture of her marriage was shattered beyond repair, but she was no longer just a victim. She was watching, waiting, and preparing. Zainab lay awake that night after the family gathering, staring at the ceiling. The whispers, the glances, the way Kunal hovered around Amina, they played over and over in her mind like a cruel film. She had all the proof she needed in her heart, but proof wasn't enough. If she confronted them now, they would deny it. Kunal was clever, smooth with words, and Amina would hide behind tears. No, Zainab thought. She needed something stronger, something no one could ever talk their way out of. The next morning, when Kunal left for work, she returned to the study. Her hands didn't tremble this time. She pulled the album out, laid it on the desk, and began scanning each page carefully. The soft hum of the scanner filled the room as one by one. The photos became digital evidence. Every image of Amina, laughing, swimming, sleeping, was saved and copied. With every click, Zainab felt her fear transform into focus. This was no longer just pain. This was preparation. But even the strongest person knows when they need someone to lean on. Zainab called the only person she trusted completely, her childhood friend, Kayamika. They had grown up together, shared secrets from the days of braiding hair under mango trees, and even now, Kayamika was her safe place. When she arrived at the house, Zainab locked the doors, closed the curtains, and showed her everything. Kayamika gasped as she flipped through the scanned images, her hand covering her mouth. "Zainab, this is madness," she whispered. "Your own sister? And Kunal after everything." Zainab nodded, her eyes glassy but steady. "I don't want to cry anymore. I want them to pay. Both of them." The two women sat together for hours, piecing together a plan that was as bold as it was dangerous. Kayamika, always the quick thinker, suggested that they shouldn't just confront Kunal privately. It wouldn't be enough. Men like him thrived in silence, hiding their sins behind their reputations. The exposure had to be public, undeniable, unforgettable. Zainab thought about it. Kunal loved being admired, loved being the center of attention, the perfect husband with the perfect life. What better way to break him than to take that stage he loved and turn it against him? So the plan was born. Zainab would play the part of the loyal wife a little longer. She would smile, attend dinners, and let Kunal believe she was blind to everything. But behind the scenes, she and Kayamika would gather every piece of evidence, prepare every detail. They would wait for the perfect moment, when all the important people, family, friends, business associates, were present. And then, the truth would come alive in a way no one could ever erase. When Kayamika left that evening, Zainab felt lighter. She wasn't just a woman betrayed anymore. She was a woman with a plan. The same hands that had once trembled over the album were now steady. Quietly, carefully, she was setting the trap, and when it closed, it would crush everything Kunal and Amina thought they could hide. The night of the dinner came dressed in glitter and perfume. Kunal had spared no expense, as always. The mansion gleamed under soft golden lights. The dining table stretched long and elegant, covered with crystal glasses, fine china, and dishes prepared by the best caterers in Lagos. Guests arrived in their best clothes, greeting Kunal with respect, admiration, and envy. He thrived on moments like this, playing the generous host, shaking hands, pouring drinks, making sure every laugh was louder because of him. Zainab played her role just as perfectly. She floated around the room in a deep emerald gown, her smile calm, her eyes bright. No one could tell that inside, her heart was made of steel that night. She laughed at jokes, welcomed guests, and leaned gently into her husband's arm whenever he introduced her as his beautiful queen. If anyone noticed her quiet composure, they mistook it for elegance. Only she knew it was the calm before a storm. And of course, Amina was there. She walked in wearing a fitted gown that shimmered under the lights, her beauty undeniable. She hugged Zainab, kissed her cheek, and whispered how happy she was to be there. Zainab smiled back, her face soft, but her chest tightened as she noticed the familiar flicker in Kunal's eyes when he saw her sister. It was the same hunger she had watched at the family gathering. Tonight, though, she didn't flinch. Tonight, she was ready. The dinner went on beautifully. Plates clattered with jollof rice, peppered fish, suya, and steaming soups. Glasses clinked. The sound of laughter rolled through the house like music. Kunal was in his element, charming the elders, impressing the young men, and making the women blush with his polished compliment. Zainab watched him carefully, noting the way his gaze strayed toward Amina, even in the middle of conversations. It made her skin crawl, but her face never changed. She smiled, nodded, and waited. When dessert was served and the mood reached its warmest, Zainab finally stood. She clinked her glass gently, and the chatter slowed. All eyes turned to her. With her most gracious smile, she looked at her husband. "Kunal," she said softly, her voice steady, "you've worked so hard and you've accomplished so much. Tonight, I thought it would be beautiful to celebrate you in a special way." Kunal's chest swelled with pride. He leaned back, nodding, ready to receive the praise. The guests clapped politely, smiling at the picture-perfect wife honoring her husband. Zainab gestured toward the projector screen already set up near the dining hall. "I prepared a little surprise presentation," announced. "A slideshow of achievements, memories, and the life we've built together. Something for everyone here to see." The guests murmured in delight. Kunal beamed, adjusting his cufflinks, already imagining the photos of his business ventures, the charity events, the vacations. He raised his glass, winking at Zainab. But Zainab's smile didn't waver. Calm, composed, unshaken, she pressed the button. The screen flickered to life. And in that single moment, The trap she had built so carefully began to close. The room grew quiet as the lights dimmed, leaving only the soft glow from the projector at the end of the dining hall. Guests leaned back in their seats, ready to enjoy what they thought would be a slideshow of Connell's success stories. Photos of business deals, vacations abroad, maybe even charity galas where he shook hands with important people. Connell himself smiled proudly, his hand resting lazily on the table, his glass raised like a king about to be praised. The first image appeared, but it wasn't what anyone expected. On the huge screen, clear and sharp, was the face of Amina. She wasn't dressed up for the camera, not posing for any professional shot. It was one of the private photos from the hidden album, her hair falling loosely around her face, her smile soft and unguarded. The room went completely still. Before anyone could process it, the slideshow continued. Another photo of Amina filled the screen. Then another. And another. Different clothes, different settings, but always the same face. Amina laughing, Amina swimming, Amina sitting on a couch with her dress slightly out of place. One after the other, the images rolled like a drumbeat, steady and undeniable. Gasps broke through the silence. A fork clattered to the floor. Someone whispered, "What is this?" Amina's hands shook as she tried to hold her glass, but it slipped from her fingers and shattered on the tiled floor. She stood frozen, her face draining of color, her eyes darting between her sister and Connell. Connell's smile vanished instantly. His body stiffened, his face pale under the glow of the screen. For the first time that night, the confident host had nothing to say. He opened his mouth, closed it again, his eyes flicking around the room as if searching for an escape. The slideshow didn't stop. Page after page from the secret album came alive before everyone, projected larger than life. Each photo was a confession, louder than words, impossible to deny. Guests looked from the screen to Connell, then to Amina, then to Zainab, who stood calmly at the corner of the room, her hands folded in front of her, her expression unreadable. The whispers grew louder, spreading like fire. "This is madness." "Is that Amina?" "But Connell, how?" The weight of shame pressed down heavy in the room, and it was unbearable for those at the center of it. Amina finally covered her face with her hands, tears streaming through her fingers. She shook her head, as if refusing to believe what was happening, but the photos told the truth she couldn't escape. Connell reached out as if to stop the slideshow, but the projector was far from him, controlled by Zainab. His voice cracked as he tried to speak, but no one was listening anymore. When the final photo faded, silence returned, thicker than before. The dinner that was supposed to crown Connell's glory had turned into a stage for his deepest shame, and everyone present had seen it. The last image lingered on the screen before fading into black, leaving only the stunned faces of the guests and the suffocating silence in the room. All eyes turned to Connell, the man who had built his life on appearances, now stripped bare in front of everyone who once admired him. Zainab, still standing with calm composure, broke the silence. Her voice was steady, not raised, but every word carried like thunder. "Connell," she said softly, her eyes locked on him. "Do you want to explain to everyone what they just saw?" Connell's mouth opened and closed like he was struggling to find air. His hands gripped the edge of the table, his confidence gone. "Zainab, it's not what it looks like," he stammered, his voice uneven. A weak laugh slipped out, desperate, fake. "Someone must have tampered with the photos. This is a mistake." A ripple of disbelief moved through the guests. Heads shook, murmurs rose. The images had been too clear, too personal. There was no mistake. Zainab's eyes didn't blink as she leaned slightly forward. "Tampered?" she repeated. "Are you saying those weren't your photos? The ones I found locked in your drawer?" Connell's face flushed, and sweat glistened on his forehead. He shook his head quickly, words tumbling out in fragments. No, you don't understand. It's just, she was always around, I didn't mean." Before he could finish, Amina's choked sobs filled the room. She had been frozen until now, but suddenly she broke, tears streaming down her face. "Zainab, I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice shaking as her shoulders trembled. "I didn't want this to happen. I swear I didn't mean to." Her words dissolved into more sobs, her body shaking as she buried her face in her hand. Gasps rose from the table. Some of the elders looked away in shame, while others glared at Connell with disgust. The betrayal was no longer hidden. It was alive, bleeding, undeniable. Connell reached out toward Amina, his hand hovering as though to comfort her, but the sight only fueled the whispers in the room. "So it's true," someone muttered under their breath. Another voice, sharper, said, "Your wife's sister? Connell, how could you?" Zainab raised her hand slightly, and the murmurs stopped. She wasn't yelling, she wasn't breaking down. She spoke with the calmness of a woman who had already grieved her pain and now stood only with strength. "I trusted you, Connell. I defended you when people said men like you couldn't be faithful. I believed in us. And all this time it wasn't strangers, it was my own sister." Amina sobbed harder, shaking her head. "Please, Zainab, forgive me. I didn't know how to stop it." But Zainab's eyes were cold now. You both knew exactly what you were doing. The silence that followed was crushing. Kunal sat slumped, unable to deny any further, while Amina collapsed into her chair, consumed by shame. Around them, family and friends watched in disbelief, their perfect picture of the couple shattered beyond repair. And in that silence, Zainab's calm voice had spoken louder than any scream could. The air in the dining hall was heavy, as if everyone had forgotten how to breathe. Kunal sat frozen, his face pale, sweat clinging to his forehead. Amina sobbed quietly, her shoulders shaking as she avoided her sister's eyes. The family looked back and forth, waiting for Zainab to either collapse in tears or storm out in anger. But she did neither. She stood still, calm, her voice steady when she finally spoke again. I should tell you all something, she began, her gaze fixed on Kunal. You see, while Kunal has been busy playing the role of the successful husband, I've been busy too. I spoke to my lawyer weeks ago. Every single business Kunal claims as his own. Every deal, every contract, every company. He does not own them alone. My name is on those papers. My signature built them too. And as of today, control of those businesses is in my hands. The words landed like thunder. Gasps echoed around the table. Kunal's head shot up, his eyes wide. What are you talking about? He shouted, his voice breaking. That's not true. You can't. But Zainab cut him off, her tone sharp yet calm. Don't lie again, Kunal. You know it's true. You were careless, and you underestimated me. You thought I was just the wife smiling beside you. You never realized I was also the partner reading the contracts, making the investments, putting down the money when you couldn't. I have proof, and so does my lawyer. So now, everything you thought was yours is no longer yours alone. Kunal's lips moved, but no sound came. His eyes darted toward the guests, but no one came to his defense. The image of his power had been ripped apart in front of everyone. Zainab turned then, her eyes resting on Amina. Her voice softened, but it carried the sting of betrayal. And you, my sister, the one I trusted most. Do you remember who paid for your education abroad? Do you remember who covered your rent, your books, your clothes? It was me, not Kunal. Me. I wanted you to succeed, to shine, to be everything you dreamed of. And this is how you repay me? By betraying me with my own husband. Amina's sobs grew louder. She shook her head, words fumbling from her lips. Zainab, I didn't mean for it to go this far. Please, I was weak. But her excuses only deepened the shame in the room. Zainab's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. Her pain was clear, but so was her strength. I gave you both everything, my love, my trust, my support, and you both threw it away. But I will not fall because of you. I will rise. She straightened her shoulders, her voice firm. Tonight, you tried to humiliate me in secret. Instead, you have humiliated yourselves in public. The power is no longer yours, Kunal. And Amina, the bond we shared is broken. I will not let either of you destroy me. The room was silent again, but this time it was a silence of awe. Everyone saw it. Zainab wasn't just the betrayed wife. She was now the woman in control, stronger than ever, standing taller while those who hurt her crumbled in shame. The grand dinner ended in ruins. What was supposed to be Kunal's night of glory had turned into his public disgrace. Guests left quietly, their faces tight with judgment, their whispers sharp. Even Kunal's own relatives avoided his eyes, slipping out one by one, unwilling to be associated with the shame now tied to his name. The once proud man sat slumped at the table, abandoned, his empire crumbling in front of him. Amina could not bear it. Her tears wouldn't stop, her body trembling as she ran from the room. The sound of her heels echoed through the hallway before fading into silence. By the next morning, she was gone from Lagos, fleeing from the humiliation that would follow her wherever she went. Her reputation, once filled with promise, was now stained beyond repair. Zainab, though wounded deeply, refused to let her pain turn her bitter. Instead, she channeled it into something greater. She poured her time and resources into women empowerment projects across Lagos, creating spaces for women to find strength, independence, and protection against betrayal like her. Every event she led, every young woman she supported, became a quiet reminder of her resilience. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the city in gold, Zainab walked out of the mansion for the last time. She didn't look back at the house that had once been her cage of lies. Her head was high, her steps steady, her silence louder than any revenge. She had lost love, but she had gained power, dignity, and purpose. In the end, it was her quiet strength that made her unforgettable.